So really welcome. I think I know many of you, and for those of you I don't know, I'm Sumedha, and I'm one of the core teachers with SMS. And I really, as many of you know, I really love these Sunday Sanghas. So, yeah, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy all of you are here as well. So, and yeah, for anybody who's new, just to say that the session lasts for an hour, and within that there'll be chanting and some guided meditation, and also a reflection. And this week the reflection is on like deep friendship with one's being, and how that can be a supporting practice. So yeah, so there'll be a reflection about that. And then after the hour is up, there's 15 minutes where you're very welcome to stay on if you have time to do that for questions or sharing. So, and then we'll end at like 10:15 Pacific time. So let's start with some chanting, and I'll put the link to the chanting book in the chat. So just to explain, I live off-grid, and so I am very blessed to have internet, but I'm not going to share screen because sometimes that asks too much of it. So I'll put the link to the chanting booklet in the chat, and you're very welcome to open that on your own screen. And then, yeah, to join in with the chanting if you wish to. So, yeah, many of you know that Sacred Mountain Sangha chanting is like quite an important part of the practice. And there's a sense of, like, for me personally, how chanting helps us to resonate like from a different part of our being with the teachings and with intentions. And so it can be really nice to either listen, to attune, to feel the vibrations, to join in, to contemplate how these chants have actually been chanted over eons, like long thousands of years. And so they do carry a certain energy, actually. I know when I was a nun and we'd do the protection chants, and like when I first started doing them, I'd just weep when I was doing them, and I didn't know why. So we like chanting along and weeping. But yeah, it can be a very deep experience. So let's start. I'll keep putting the link to the chanting book in the chat so we keep joining. So let's start with the refuges and precepts on page 3. And I apologize that my eyes keep moving around. It's because I'm letting people in. So Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. And then the precepts, which are really these mirrors or reflections for me into a sense of deep contemplation of our intentions, our actions, the effects of our actions. And they can just be like road bumps that help us to notice if we're starting to behave in a certain way that it may be harmful for ourselves or others. So they can be really nice to bring these to mind regularly. Panatipata Veda Manisika Padang Samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from intentionally taking life. Adinadana Veda Manisika Padang Samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame Sumichachara Veda Manisika Padang Samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from misuse of sexuality and the senses. Musawada Veda Manisika Padang Samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from speech that is false, divisive, harsh, and meaningless. Sura Meraya Majapamadhatana Veda Manisika Padang Samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from intoxication which leads to carelessness. And then we can go to page 4 of the chanting booklet, the recollection of the triple jewel. And we'll chant it in Pali, but it can be really nice to come back and read through the translation to be able to kind of let the contemplations deepen both through the chanting, through the Pali, and also through kind of our thinking mind that can take in the meanings and let them filter down into our being. So, Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijacharana sampano sugato lokavidu anutaro purisadhammasarati sata Dewa manusanam buddho bhagava tisawakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipasiko panayiko pachatang veditabo vinyuhiti supatipano bhagavato sawakasango Uchupatipano bhagavato sawakasango Nyayapatipano bhagavato sawakasango Samichipatipano bhagavato sawakasango Yadidam chatari purisayugani yatapur Purisa Pugana Esa Bhagavato Sawakasango Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutarang Punyaketam Lokasati. Then we could chant the reflections on universal well-being on page 7. which, as many of you know, are also a contemplation of the four Brahma Vihara, the divine abidings. And as we chant this, we can really attune to the deep intention and sharing of intention and the heart's movement to bring this into being, these aspirations. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. So, letting these vibrations resonate through our being. Maybe noticing the power of recollecting and remembering and aligning our heart, our being, with these qualities of awakening, honoring that which is awake within us, honoring the teachings that help us to learn and unfold in our being into an understanding of how we get caught in greed and hatred and delusion. And there's also something within our being that is not caught in these forces. And keep listening, helping us to unfold our capacity for awareness, and wisdom, and compassion, connection. Just feeling what it feels like to give time and allow ourselves to kind of orient, to remember this possibility of awakeness within us. This very deep friendship within our being that wants to attune to our listening heart, wants to allow ourselves to deepen in non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, wants to learn. And maybe learn how to hold the places in our heart that are caught, that feel unbalanced. And is this that this can come from a root of deep love in our being. A recognition that there is something more within us that can hold our confusions, our delusions, and slowly help us to see more clearly, live more connectedly. And noticing that we can also give time, give energy as we are doing now to that which supports this movement. We're gathering in Sangha, listening to teachings, chanting, helping ourselves to remember that within our heart that is listening, is spacious, is able to see clearly. We're really honoring now that in you which has brought you here. And also feeling freshly what it is to be here. So we can notice our listening heart. We can also really anchor this within our body. So just sensing how we sense our body here without adding a fixed perception. So we don't have to add an image or a habit to it. But how do I very kindly know my body is here? Maybe the warmth or the weight or the contact with the earth. And with this very spacious heart, receiving our being here. without having to add a comment or a habit or a fixed perception. And yet noticing that even without adding a fixed perception, our experience can be grounded, it can be connected. As we sense our warmth, our weight, the touch of the earth, the rhythm of the breath. And a certain spaciousness. It's just receiving. Sensing our being here in a very fresh way, very connected way. And as we're coming to the end of the meditation, maybe just noticing it again without grasping or trying to get hold of something, but just that seed or inclination of heart that's here within us that wants to listen, wants to unfold in our experience out of the habits that are harmful to our own being or the wider life that we're part of. Wants to keep anchoring in non-greed, in non-hatred, in non-delusion. We can't grasp this, but we can sense, appreciate, honor, and keep allowing this to guide us. We can keep nourishing this, whether through Sangha or through practice, through reflection, through chanting, these many ways. And through loving it, through loving this movement of the heart. Let's end the meditation together there. And welcome to those of you who've been joining throughout the chanting and throughout the meditation. So I wanted to give some reflections in this session around this kind of movement that I was just touching into in the meditation, where there can be something in our practice that I know, like we talk about this a lot, but where we come to practice with our habitual mind, which can sometimes be like with an agenda or pushing, or like kind of a big self-improvement plan, or whatever our different habitual mindsets may be. I know that's certainly been the case for me. And over kind of a long time of practice, I realized there's something in me which has shifted quite deeply, much more into an attitude of like loving practice as a way of honoring that which is kind of like the deepest root within our being somehow. And of course, there are many, many ways to do this. But for me, setting aside a time for meditation, for listening, for kind of honoring that listening and honoring life in that way is like a deep movement of friendship. Like the deepest friendship that I can give to myself is to want to keep coming back to that. So which has shifted a lot the kind of energy that I come to practice with. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about this today. And also, I mean, of course, in the suttas, as we know, like spiritual friendship with other beings is very highly praised. So like in the suttas, it says, there's the famous quote where the Buddha's talking to Ananda, and he says, Ananda says that spiritual friendship is like half of the holy life, and the Buddha says, don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. Spiritual friendship is actually the whole of the holy life. And this is like a model on an external level. And the reason that he says that when we have good friends externally, they help us to develop the path. So they're mirrors to us, mirrors to our deepest being. And I've certainly had this experience of this. So when I lived in the monastery, I felt like it was a time in my life, although, monastic's not perfect, the monastic system is definitely not perfect. But I did feel it was a time in my life where I received a lot of mirroring of what was underneath my patterns. So I came along with all my, like, really quite a lot of hang-ups and neurosis, and I want to practice, and I'm not good enough, and I'm this and I'm that, and people really reflected deeply that we each have a capacity for awareness, and almost like whether we take that seriously or not, it's there. And it was mirrored to me that potential was real within me. And as I started to trust that mirror, it's like it started to unfold and awaken and kind of become alive as an experience. There really is a deeper awareness that can help to hold the patterns of contraction, the patterns of delusion, and give a different perspective on them, help to understand what needs holding, what needs to be released. And so like maybe coming together in Sangha like this, we have the experience of some of that kind of holding, of coming together and having a sense of, there are people here who are interested in this deep capacity of heart, who are interested in teachings that help me to understand, and we help each other to understand, and we can bring this into the world, which is also really important. So the Buddha talked about, so there was the Buddha, the capacity that's awake, there's the teachings, or one way of understanding Dharma is also as nature, that we're coming back to something much more natural within our being, and community, Sangha. So we're bringing these teachings through for me in a broader and broader sense. So I want to say a little bit more about this, and it's almost like for me that primordial in this is the reminder that there is something within us that has the capacity for wisdom, for non-greed, for non-hatred, for non-delusion, because our society doesn't encourage this, as we're seeing, like very, very destructive patterns of consumerism, of hatred, of destruction. And we're seeing that very actively now in many different situations. And it takes a certain courage, a certain heart to trust, I think, that we do have a capacity for non-hatred, non-delusion, non-greed, and that we can help each other in this. So this is like a really, really important form of deep friendship in this world. And different, even political commentators have been bringing this through. So I read something at the beginning of not at the beginning, but after October the 7th, so with the unfolding genocide in Gaza, where Charles Eisenstein was saying, if you have a really, really angry friend, so it was in relation to the US arming Israel, and he was saying, if you have a really, really angry friend, you don't give them a baseball bat, to keep being violent. You try and help them to understand what's happening, to come out of these patterns. And so we can engage with this at many different levels, externally within our intimate circles and also within ourselves. And so for me, this is where there's a dialogue between external friendship, internal friendship. How do we help ourselves to keep coming back to this root and help it to keep coming through? And so the Buddha did talk a lot about this kind of form of spiritual friendship externally, and he gave teachings in that context. So there's a very beautiful teaching where he talks about, that the kind of so-called destination in the spiritual path is the destruction of lust, the destruction of hatred, the destruction of delusion. And he says that he teaches about this desiring our welfare. He wants us to be well. He wants us to be balanced. He wants us to be living in this world in a way that we are not causing harm. And yet how we frame this path is very important for me. Because if we come at it with just a sense of striving, so we do need energy, we do need commitment, we need determination. But if we come with a kind of hardness in that, then we're going to not sustain our path. For me, we have to love what we're doing And almost in like loving what we're doing, it helps it to stay, to be sustaining, to be sustainable. And so like one word for spiritual friendship is friendship with the beautiful. Coming back to that within us, which is nourishing. So for me, there's something about this external model of spiritual friendship that I definitely bring internally. It's like with this attitude of how do I befriend that which is most deep within me? How do I build a relationship with it, actually? And there is something about practice where we are reframing a certain relationship within ourselves. So for me, there is a sense of, instead of coming at my habits with my habitual mind, and I start to receive them from a deep awareness, and there's a different relationship from that awareness with what is arising. There's, from that awareness, there is the deep wish to understand what is causing harm. So like a willingness to kind of unpeel the onion, if you like, and to hold certain parts of our behaviors, to meet them with kindness, to meet them with understanding, and also to meet them with determination that that which is harmful we will let go of. But it's very different from a sense of criticism or agenda. It's from this deep friendship, I want to come back to that which is most authentic within me. And I can hold, from this, I can learn to hold that which is difficult. And I really love, there's a quote from Einstein that I really love, where he talks about the kind of optical illusion that we've got caught in as humans, where he says like a human being is a part of the whole that is called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and our feelings as something separated from the rest, which is a kind of optical delusion of our consciousness. And he says this delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. And so our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty, and ourselves included. So for me, it's this like, how do we help ourselves out of this optical delusion that we've got ourselves caught in? We can't force ourselves through it. We can't come at it through our habitual mind. So we develop a loving relationship with that which is deeper within us, that which is calling us, which is deeper. And then this also has a certain fiber to it. So, there's one way, and there's a kind of sense of like, oh, which is very beautiful. We're learning to rest deeply in that which is most profound within us. And that's very, very beautiful. And there's also a certain fiber to it, where it's, as we do this, we start to come out of our contractions. We start to recognize how deeply connected we are. So like, just in that meditation, I was kind of suggesting to meet, say, the sense of our body in a very fresh way, where it's like we feel the warmth, we feel the weight, we feel the vibration, we feel the breath. And as we do this without adding the perception of I'm this person sitting here with my interests, maybe we start to notice our deep interconnectedness, for instance, or our deep groundedness. And this brings with it a sense of this kind of part that which is for harm for one's own being and for this life one is part of. So even in external models of spiritual friendship, the Buddha talks about like hanging out with people who have good ethics, who have a sense of ethical listening and awareness. So not to say like, there's one way of behaving, but where there's an attunement to causing harm or not. He talks about in external friendship, mixing with the kind of people who are encouraging this kind of ethical reflection, or who are honest, or who we trust their sense of wisdom. And so there's a certain fiber to it. It's not just like, oh, I hang out in the light. It's like, actually, no, there's a questioning, how are we in this world, and what supports us to act in ways that are non-harmful, to be in ways that are non-harmful, to be in ways that are connected. And similarly, for me, there's this in attuning to that which is aware within us, that which is wise within us. There's a similar attunement to its sensitivity, to its ethical kind of sensitivity, to its sense of how am I causing harm in this world or not, but not from, again, this sense of judgment, right, wrong. Is like, is my being connected? Is it acting from this deep place? Where do I need to learn? Where do I need to maybe look at my behavior again? And this in the context of like a deep friendship that has a certain fiber to it. Because we're developing a relationship with our deepest awareness that wants us to awaken, actually, to the ways in which we cause suffering to our own being or in the world that we're part of. And so as we're doing this, we can be both recognizing our deep, deep resource in terms of awareness, in terms of embodiment, in terms of interconnectedness. And we can be both nourished by that and taking in the mirrors that it gives us. What do I need to learn here? Where do I rest? What do I need to open into? What might I need to cultivate or let go of? And in all of this, again, this model of friendship for me is one of listening, of being willing to learn, of humility, actually, and of a certain strength, a certain determination, and a certain trust in that deepest level of being that knows it can hold, knows that we can stay aware, knows that there are certain parts of our being that we can let go of. Or that we can cultivate. So it's like, whereas when I'm just in my habitual sense, I don't have that. I'm like, oh, I'm like this. Whereas when I attune to that deepest part of my being, I'm like, actually, I can cultivate, I can grow, and I can let go as well of things that even I feel attached to, so it's a deep learning. And it's important for me, again, in this model of friendship, that it's a connected learning. This is not coming from our head. It's coming from our sense of like heart, of embodied being, of a sense of connected being that helps us to keep listening. And helps us to move through the patterns that are harmful. We need to have a deep root in order to be able to do this. And it asks for a certain truthfulness in our being as well, which again is a quality of friendship for me. And James Baldwin, who I really like, actually, he's got a lot of very good things to say on friendship in being. So he talks about love as mirroring each other's light in a very deep way, helping ourselves to let go of our masks. So not a facile sense of love, but that which helps us to let go of our masks. And he also talks about this truthfulness. So he says, the collision between one's image of oneself and what one actually is always very painful. And there are two things you can do about it. You can meet the collision head on and try to become what you really are. So this coming to one's deepest root. Or you can retreat and try to remain what you thought you were, which is a fantasy in which you will certainly perish. So I really like this because it's like this friendship that is like, rah, it's like Kuan Yin in her ferocious mode, where it's like, come on, awaken and bring that into this world, bring it in and keep this question alive in our interconnected being. And this is very much reflected in like the texts and what it says about external spiritual friendship, where it talks about like a true-hearted friend as that which reminds you when you're being heedless or when you're causing harm. And also that helps us to, I really love this, there's a phrase where it says a true-hearted friend helps you to hear what you have not heard before. And we have this both, we can have it both externally, we can have it internally, that part of our heart that helps us to recognize maybe what we haven't heard before, that we do have something deep, and also what we haven't heard before, maybe in terms of recognizing certain patterns that are harmful, being able to hold that, let it go. And so this kind of friendship with one's being isn't bypassing, because it's not enmity. It's not pushing things away. It's like more and more, how can I hold what is arising from a deep place, and see what is harmful, let it go, hold that which needs to be cultivated. So it's a very thorough, very kind of thorough path. And this is the image as well for me, you know, when sometimes we hear about in Buddhism, you know, as you're bowing to the Buddha externally, you're bowing internally. And this is what this process entails, this kind of thorough friendship. It's like, I was once in the monastery, it made me really, really laugh, because somebody had just done a retreat, and he came out of the retreat into this kind of sharing circle, and he had a towel around his neck. So he looked like he was a wrestler or something. And somebody said, so how was your retreat? And he went, thorough. And I was like, and you know, and it's not like it always has to be having a hard time, but there was something very sincere in what he said. It was like, that was thorough. Okay, yeah. So hopefully he had some restful moments as well, but yeah. So yeah, so to kind of start to close a little bit these reflections, that there's just something about this shift in attitude in our practice, that it can really help to shift us from a sense of striving, and yet give us a very, very deep root of love, of determination, of a real willingness to hold, willingness to reflect, willingness to examine, willingness to shift our behaviors, internal and external. And in this, for me, as we're growing, it's almost like as we're helping ourselves to let go of our delusions, we're reconnecting. So we're actually coming into a sense of deep friendship with ourselves, and also reconnecting maybe with the world in a different way, with a sense of what resources us, in terms of immediate Sangha, in terms of teachings, and also for me in terms of the natural world. There's a huge resource in recognizing that we have this part of our being that is almost more than human. It's part of the natural world, and there's also this beautiful listening awareness that we have in our capacity. Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, look forward to seeing you. And so practice becomes more like part of a natural cycle, almost, where there's a deep motivation, there's a deep giving back, and in that there's a nourishment that helps us to keep going, not from a place of determination. And so maybe to end, I want to read a quote that is from, a lot of you know my favourite Irish philosopher and poet, John O'Donoghue. And in the Celtic view of the world, it's very interconnected. It's very deep, actually. It's a very kind of soulful world. And I grew up in Scotland, so I feel very touched by both that and the way the kind of elements play into Celtic spirituality. And there's a specific term in Celtic spirit, in Irish spirituality, for a soul friend, for a spiritual friend. And I think we can apply this both externally and internally. So it's a very real thing. It's a social construct in Ireland that you can have one of these soul friends, apparently. And it also has for me a parallel in our inner world, that I think this is a really powerful quote where he says, the Celtic tradition recognized that an anam cara friendship, which is one of these soul friendships, was graced with affection. Friendship awakens affection, so whether externally or internally. The heart learns a new art of feeling. And such friendship is neither cerebral nor abstract. In Celtic tradition, the anam cara was not merely a metaphor or ideal, it was a soul bond that existed as a recognized and admired social construct. So this is externally. And then what he then says can apply internally as well. It altered the meaning of identity and perception. When your affection is kindled, the world of your intellect takes on a new tenderness and compassion. You look and see and understand differently. Initially, this can be disruptive and awkward, but it gradually refines your sensibility and transforms your way of being in the world. It's a really, really beautiful quote from John O'Donoghue. So yeah, let's just sit together quietly for the last couple of minutes. And really thank you for your presence. I hope there was something helpful in there. And if there wasn't, then you can let it go or let it cook. And anyone who wants to stay on for, so I won't ring a bell. I'll, at the end of like a few quiet minutes together, I'll invite people to leave or to stay for the last 15 minutes of sharing or questions. So thank you. As we come to the end of the session together, just really attuning to that which is awake and listening within one's heart. In so many hearts in this world. And dropping in a moment of gratitude. Appreciation of how deep, how limitless this part of our being can be, how it can help us to keep learning and unfolding. And also, as we breathe in, deepening in this, and as we breathe out, sharing out any sense of ease, any sense of well-being, any sense of aspiration for all of us as humans to learn to attune to that which is non-harmful, is non-affected by greed, not affected by hatred, and not caught in delusion. Sending that back out into this world for the well-being of beings, human, non-human. For this planet that we're part of. May we learn about the causes of harm and release them deep with rigor in our own being and in how we come into this world.